The prosecution and their first witness in Sean Diddy Combs' sex trafficking trial is underway. On the stand is Los Angeles police officer Israel Florez. He was working security at the Intercontinental Hotel back in 2016 when Combs was seen on video assaulting his then girlfriend Cassie Ventura in a hallway in the hotel.
Florez testified he received a call that day saying there was, quote, a woman in distress on the 6th floor. He says he stepped out of the elevator and that's when he saw Sean Combs and the woman in the elevator lobby. Florez testified he recognized the man in the lobby as Combs, so he's identified Sean Diddy Combs here, and that he found Combs to have a devilish stare. That is the quote that he used to describe that. He then identified Combs in the courtroom. Ariva Martin is with us now. She's an attorney and legal affairs commentator. We're also joined by Lisa Bonner. And I do want to note, Ariva, some other things have happened, which is important here. Florez, now Officer Florez, at the time he was sort of second in command of security at the hotel, but he says that Combs actually approached him in the hotel room with a wad of cash that he interpreted to be a bribe. Florez took it to mean, quote, don't tell nobody, he said on the stand. What do these details tell you as you're learning them?
Well, Brianna, very troubling testimony for the defense. This witness is an excellent witness for the prosecution, laying the foundation for that explosive videotape that the judge has ruled will be admitted into evidence during this trial. We've heard a lot about that videotape, the defense saying that what we've seen so far is not the complete video, and that the video in what they call undoctored form is going to tell a different story. One thing to note, Brianna, the defense, a part of their strategy is to paint this as the domestic violence situation, that yes, Sean Diddy Combs was violent, yes, he used violence on this video, but that this was all a part of a domestic violence incident involving him and a long-term girlfriend. They're trying to downplay any suggestion that this is sex trafficking, coercion, or violence used to commit sex acts as have been charged in the indictment. But I'm not certain that defense is going to work, because when you look at the totality of the evidence that the prosecution has mounted, it is very disturbing.
Lisa, I want to ask you about some of the other things that have come from Florez's testimony. Notably, he said that as he was escorting Combs and Cassie back to their room, he heard Combs tell her, "You're not going to leave." And that plays into the idea that she was there essentially against her will. But he also, Florez, apparently has told the jury that he asked Cassie multiple times, repeatedly, if she wanted him to call police. And he said that she simply wanted to leave the premises. Apparently, when he did, he says that she left with a black eye, so marks on her face, but refusing to call the police. I wonder what you make of that.
Well, good afternoon, Boris and Brianna. That is a very disturbing statement, and also very common amongst victims of domestic violence. They are often terrified of their abusers and the repercussions that could come after reporting something as serious as her being dragged by her hair. The more violence that you are witnessing, the more repercussions and the repercussions might be. So this is a very disturbing statement, but it also tracks very much with what we have heard from several of the victims and several of the witnesses throughout, that he is a very powerful man, that he is one who believed in retribution, and for her to be involved in a decades-long relationship with her, that proves that she understood and knew that if she did report that, there would be serious repercussions to come, not only from Combs, but also from others in his inner circle. And that goes to the heart of the RICO case, which we are going to see unfold very truthfully, I'm assuming, from Cassie and the federal government's case.
And Lisa, we're just getting all these details from now Officer Israel Florez about what happened after Cassie Ventura left. He said after that he went back to Combs's room with another guard, so another security guard, to reiterate the hotel policy. He said Combs stepped into the hall, that he closed the hotel room door behind him, and at one point Combs grabbed the other security guard's phone and accused him of recording the conversation, that Florez pinned Combs to the wall and told him to let go of the phone. As the prosecution and prosecutor Christy Slavic is building this story, Lisa, what is this saying to the jury?
This is again saying that he is a very powerful man with a very bad temper, one who used violence to coerce people into bending to his will. And this tracks with the entire prosecution's narrative that he was violent towards his victims, that he used abuse, he used false imprisonment, and they have not only the fact of these testimonies, but you're going to see this repeatedly throughout, not only through testimony, but through tapes, through other eyewitness testimony. So I believe that they are trying to establish a pattern of not only abuse, but violence in order to get people to bend to his will.
We got an update a moment ago that Florez apparently sent an incident report at 3 p.m. that day describing the entire interaction with Combs and Cassie from start to finish. I imagine, Ariva, that the prosecution is going to use that to try to corroborate some of the statements that he's making. I do wonder how you think the defense is going to approach some of this testimony.
I think they're going to hone in on Cassie's statements that she did not want to call the police, because a big part of the defense's strategy here is to prove that this was a consensual relationship and that what was on that videotape was merely a dispute, even though it was a violent dispute between two consenting adults over infidelity. We're going to hear a lot about what was on a telephone that Sean Diddy Combs has and that had at the time, and that Cassie Ventura was trying to take the telephone, and that there was a battle of sorts or a fight of sorts over this phone. They've also made a big deal about talking about how strong these women were, how confident the women were. And all of that is a part of the defense's strategy to say, look, these women had the ability to walk away from this relationship if they felt coerced, if they felt any threat of violence. So the jurors are going to have to really pay attention to what we now know is that so many victims of this kind of conduct don't go to the police, are afraid, as Lisa said, to make reports to the police because fear of retribution and fear of more violence. But I think the defense is really going to try to hone in on Cassie's unwillingness to step forward and make a police report or call the police at the time that she was being assaulted by Combs.
Yeah, it will. That would not be unusual behavior as well for someone who is abused. So we'll see how the prosecution is then going to tackle that, and ultimately what the jury is going to believe here. Ariva Martin, Lisa Bonner, thank you so much to both of you.
In the defense's opening statement, they described Combs as a, quote, complicated man, adding, quote, this case is about love, jealousy, infidelity, and money, and that this case is about voluntary adult choices made by capable adults in consensual relationships. Julie Grant joins us now live. She's a court TV anchor and former prosecutor. Julie, thanks so much for being with us. So these opening statements, the prosecution highlighting the issue of power, saying that in the case of Combs' ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, only one of them had power, only one of them had control, and that was the defendant, that was Combs. Why is that question of the power dynamic central to their case?
Boris and Brianna, thank you so much for having me. Good afternoon to you both. It's key because in domestic violence situations, a lot of people think it's about anger management. Domestic violence is not. It's about power and control. It's about batterers exerting control over their victims through means of violence, and a lot of times through emotional abuse, financial abuse, all sorts of things. And so here, that's largely at the heart of this case for both sides, as we've seen in the opening statements. We're seeing the federal government, as expected, alleging that Sean Diddy Combs had an enterprise and that he was using the whole business enterprise to coerce individuals who would be unwilling to engage in certain sexual behaviors or unwilling to be transported for such. So all of it is coercive and criminal, according to the federal government. But on the flip side, we see the defense team embracing domestic violence here, trying to curry some favor with the jury by acknowledging that Sean Combs is an imperfect person. And yes, what he did to Cassie is indefensible in terms of the battery that occurred. But they're saying that that was it, that it didn't go beyond domestic violence in that relationship, that there was no racketeering, there was no trafficking, there was no transportation of anybody for any illegitimate purpose. So this should be quite a fiery case, as you both know, Brianna and Boris, with Diddy's liberty and legacy at stake.